Growing up, I was always a pretty creative person. Most children have crazy imagination, but I like to think that I was always more keen to pursue something artistic than to do anything else. And throughout my middle school years, pretty much until the end of high school, my main creative pursuits were always creative writing and making YouTube videos. I started writing when I was like 7 years old, basically, when I learned how to write. And I gave up on it for the most part when I was around 17. It was like halfway through high school. And I created my very first YouTube channel when I was 12 years old, and I stopped making videos when I was 18 or 19, and I was trying to come back to these things ever since I stopped. Even though I stopped actively doing them, my will to continue creating something never disappeared completely, because since I was doing these things since I was so young and for so long, it always kind of felt like a part of me, and even though I stopped, I kept having these ideas and I was trying to come back to it because it felt as if I lost a part of myself. I think one of the hardest things for me in order to be able to start creating something again was obviously my perspective. I thought I was the only one having certain issues, struggling with certain things, and mostly the perception of myself, until I found out that actually most artists and creative people struggle pretty much with the same things. And on my journey to come back to my personal creative activities, I actually saw a lot of interesting advice, especially in the past 2 years, and I would like you to hear it today, because I think it would have been so much easier for me to start writing and making videos again if I heard these things sooner. I actually think everyone should know it, because most of us struggle with the same things, and our own misconceptions around what is it like to be creative. A lot of this advice, I mostly applied it to my creative writing journey, because that's something I've been doing for most of my life, despite the break that I took and a major creative block that I hit after, that pretty much lasted up until very recently. And it was always so easy for me to see being someone who writes as a part of my identity, that when I stopped, at the beginning I needed a break, but after that, after some time, I really started struggling with my perception of self, because I basically thought I was doomed and I didn't kind of have a right to pursue it anymore, because I wasn't working on it, I wasn't setting any goals, I wasn't improving, I wasn't showing up to make my ideas happen. And I basically thought that the sign of me stopping or taking a break was the sign that I wasn't naturally good, and so there wasn't any point in continuing or coming back to it, because I would only make something shitty. And I wish someone told me that I had every right to pursue what I wanted to do, despite not being naturally good. And I think this is the main thing that needs to shift in my perspective in order to be able to continue. Because throughout my childhood, for example, there were so many things that were 100 times more important for me than writing, that I never tried or never had fun with them, or didn't go further and didn't try a new hobby, because I realized I was bad, and so I thought that there was no point in continuing, even though I was a child and it was literally only for fun. So that was one of the problems for me. I didn't know anything about the learning process. I thought that if I was bad at the beginning, or I needed to come back to it, try things, train in order to be able to produce something decent, that was the sign that there was no point in doing it, because I was quite bad. Giving up on the idea of perfection was, I think, some of the most common creative advice that I have seen. Most people who try to teach you how to actively be an artist come back to this all the time, because as you can probably tell from earlier, my idea that something that I created had to be necessarily great, so it's worth continuing, was actually preventing me from doing anything at all. And I think this is actually the case for a lot of people. A world is full of artists who have a lot of passion, but they don't create, and they actually spend more time talking about it than actually doing it, as I did with writing. So I wish I knew earlier how to just put myself out there, and while making something that I personally consider good is still very important for me, you actually need to start somewhere. And regardless of whether you will actually finish some of these things or not, by doing it and practicing it regularly, you actually nourish your soul, because you started doing this thing because you loved it. For me, it was writing, and the same thing goes for videos. I never finished some of my projects, but by doing it on day-to-day basis, thinking about it, planning things, and constantly getting new ideas, I was actually deep in some sort of creative practice, and I was feeling much happier that when I stopped doing it and started thinking about how could I make the perfect thing. Action comes first, and inspiration and the new ideas come after that. This actually seems quite unbelievable, and it was so interesting for me to learn as a writer, because when I hit writer's block that actually pretty much lasted multiple years, I was kind of just like waiting for this major idea that was going to get me out of the writer's block and that I would be able to continue. But then I stumbled upon the perspective that you actually need to sit down and start writing and start doing your thing. And even though you might not know where you are quite going with that, or what is your story or your thing even about, just by sitting down and doing it, you will actually get more ideas than thinking about it and without taking any action. It sounds very counterintuitive, and I don't actually know how it works on like cognitive level. I would say it has something to do with flow state that you are not going to get into unless you actually start. It's also a type of practice when you have a writer's block or you gave up on your art a very long time ago, and maybe it will take multiple attempts to fully get back to it. I actually needed to try this many times so I could see what could work for me further, in order to be more regular and just not get further to the writer's block. But for me, sitting down and typing one very mediocre paragraph actually gave me more ideas than thinking about the fact that I didn't have any real inspiration for years. As far as the YouTube videos are concerned, I have never hit a real block. My problem has always been that I was too much in my head about it. Not always because I was seeking perfections, but I didn't really know what would be like the right thing for me to do. At one point I really wanted to experiment and explore different parts of myself through the creation of videos. Then I really needed to niche down because I thought my personal identity was going to be all over the place if I do too many things. And at one point I was really into editing and I was exploring that. I know my channel doesn't look like that right now. I actually had multiple attempts to have a YouTube channel before this one. Then I wanted videos that were very simple with little to no editing, just like kind of 2008 YouTube where people sit and talk to their webcam. It seemed like I could never decide, but I didn't struggle with having ideas. And in the light of the advice I heard, I keep thinking, would it actually have been better if I kept putting all these ideas out there and have some sort of journey and see how it evolves later, or do nothing at all because I was too paralyzed by not knowing what should be the next step. And I wanted to say that if you have a deep personal need to create something, then it's the right thing to do. Not because it's going to be exceptional from the beginning or it's going to get you the most success, but because it's part to who you are. You need to put these things out there. I know that as artists or like creative people, we often have all these impulses and we perceive the world in a certain way. And for me personally, it was actually pretty bad not to have an output and be able to put my energy into something and get something out there. And once more, this was an identity thing. I really struggled with the idea to not be able to call myself a writer one day, not because I wasn't actually working on my writing, but because I was scared that I was never going to achieve any sort of success or create something meaningful for others or whatever, no matter that it was already meaningful enough for myself. You don't earn the right to call yourself an artist by the common measures of success. You have every right to call yourself an artist because you feel that's who you are. And that was pretty much the case for me in my writing journey. And with the video ideas I kind of had this vision too, like, oh, who am I trying to impress? And everyone is going to know that I'm not actually a YouTuber or that I don't really know what I'm doing while creating these things. I wish I knew that considering myself a creative person didn't depend on whether what I was going to create was actually going to perform well or impress a lot of people or whatever, but because it was actually only the matter of having this calling to put something out there. A lot of people hesitate to create something or pursue their ideas because they think they are not original enough. And I would like to say that in everything you create, there's a part that no one else could do because it's made by you. And that's actually the reason why you should keep going. You will never feel as good about something you tried to fake or you wanted to follow the mainstream or what anyone else was doing, or on the other hand do something that wasn't very natural for you in order to be more original. But the advice that really helped me personally was to actually pursue what felt the most natural for me, because then the final result would also be aligned with who I am and probably match my creative vision the most. Community is more important than you think. This isn't really an advice that I heard, or maybe not any advice at all, but it's something that I found really important throughout my journey with coming back to what I was doing. I used to be too insecure to be able to connect with people who like to do the same things as me because, I don't know, I was scared that everyone was going to see that I was actually really bad. That's probably some form of imposter syndrome. Or I was scared that seeing what everyone else is doing was going to make me compare myself to others even more, and that I would get discouraged. But getting to meet people and talk to people who are interested in the same things as me and are serious about it in the real world was actually one of the most fulfilling parts of the process and about learning all of this for me, because I essentially realized that we are all going through the same things. And my 17-year-old self who just stopped writing, or when I first started uni and I struggled so much finding out what type of YouTube videos would be the best and the most fulfilling for me creatively. And my personal advice, based on my experience, would just be to talk to more people about it, because we are all essentially thinking about the same things. And if you clicked on this video, the chances are that you are going through something similar too. And that's what I would like the community around my channel to be too, because meeting and interacting with like-minded people will actually make a lot of things much easier and more enjoyable for you. I have actually heard much more interesting things about art, creativity, writing, pursuing your creative vision and things like that, and all of this advice was kind of all over the place, but I actually decided to gather a lot of profiles, social media accounts, and places where I learned a lot of these things and list it down below. So if you are interested in this, you can also look more deeply into people who know like a lot about this, and they very helped me personally. I think that's it for today. I think about creation every single day, and I would definitely like to make more videos about this subject along with some sort of reflection on my YouTube journey and what I learned from that, because I think it would be very interesting. So if you like this video, stay tuned for that too, and I hope to see you in the next one.